Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And if you grew up watching the same cartoons I did, then chances are you've heard of Captain Planet. And for its era, it worked. It was fun. You had this diverse cast and the Planeteers, magical rings that provided superpowers, and some solid but basic lore surrounding Gaia, the spirit of Earth. And then there was, of course, Captain Planet himself. But as fun as it was, this was also one of those shows that could only work within a certain context. Set aside the political overtones surrounding the environment, even though we shouldn't, and there's no getting around it. Captain Planet as a whole just hasn't aged particularly well. It's often overly childish at times, relying on time-tested tropes about saving the day and the power of friendship. But it can also get disturbingly serious. Just see the episodes that address drug abuse and overpopulation. More than anything else, Captain Planet was just too preachy. Sure, it offers a decent message, but every episode ended with the characters literally talking to the audience, encouraging them to become Planeteers themselves in the real world. Even if that is an objective good, that kind of overt preachiness just doesn't work anymore. That's why, despite various franchises from that time getting reboots and relaunches, Captain Planet was little more than a quirky bit of nostalgia. But then, Dynamite Entertainment entered the picture. After doing surprisingly well revamping Space Ghost, it took up the challenge of rebooting and relaunching Captain Planet as a comic. I even admit, when I heard this news, I thought it was a joke. The mere idea of relaunching Captain Planet in this day and age, it just felt like there was no way this could work as anything other than a joke. But then, the first issue actually came out in April of 2025. Out of sheer curiosity, I checked it out, not sure of what to expect. And after taking some time to process it, while also refreshing my knowledge on all things Captain Planet, I'm confident in saying this series is weird, but it's weird in the best possible way. It's not just that Captain Planet himself looks more grizzled, or that there's no lengthy PSAs about the importance of recycling at the end. This first issue simply reimagines the world of Captain Planet in a way that just hits differently than the old show. But at the same time, it resonates in a way that feels appropriate. In terms of plot, this comic is very much an origin story. It sets the stage for Gaia to recruit the Planeteers. But her reasons for doing so are a lot more urgent. Her home has been attacked. Someone has organized a considerable force in trying to capture her. In response, using the 5 elemental rings she wields, she uses them to summon Captain Planet. He is able to protect her for a time, but these mysterious attackers are equipped with more than just standard military hardware. They're eventually able to counter Captain Planet's powers, forcing him to retreat. And once they're able to subdue Gaia, she makes one last gambit, sending the 5 rings out into the world, hoping they find worthy souls who can summon Captain Planet once more. We get brief introduction to Ji, Kwame, Linka, Wheeler, and Mati. We don't learn too much about them, but we see enough to know that they come from a diverse yet jaded background. Each is involved in specific struggles that reflect the rings they receive, and they each have a bit more edge to them. And you certainly wouldn't mistake their words or mannerisms for a Saturday morning cartoon. But they still feel like the Planeteers from that same show. That's a big part of why it feels so weird. Because the tone of this comic is a lot heavier than the show ever was. It doesn't rush to get the Planeteers together so that they can summon Captain Planet to save the day. They haven't even met each other yet. They still don't understand entirely what's happening or where those rings came from. There is a foundation here for a more complicated story of how they came to be, as well as the role Captain Planet will eventually play. But there is one key detail in this series that remains wholly consistent with the classic cartoon. This world, more than most, really needs Captain Planet. It needs him because the forces behind Gaia's kidnapping aren't your run-of-the-mill polluters. They're led by Luton Plunder, a familiar villain from the show. But in this comic, he's got far more ambitious goals. He's not just out to pollute for the sake of polluting. He seeks to manipulate Gaia in all her power, and he is not the least bit concerned with the consequences. Whether there's more to his agenda is not yet clear, but it never feels as simple as a plot from the old show. This series does take advantage of the fact that it's not a cartoon geared towards kids. It can afford to be more mature, but not to a point where it doesn't feel like Captain Planet. Even if it's weird in terms of tone and style, it still works in an oddly appropriate way. I would even argue that this comic is coming along at just the right time. Our world might be very different from when this show was on the air, but given our current situation, economically, socially, and politically, it feels like we need Captain Planet in a very real sense. Not too long ago, if you went back and watched a random episode of Captain Planet, it would probably come off as a little more than a generic superhero show, just with an extra touch of environmentalism. That message would be cheesy as hell, and the characters would probably seem flat and predictable, especially the villains. But these days, rewatching an episode of Captain Planet hits differently. Not because of its messaging or tone, but because those villains don't seem so cartoonish anymore. Companies shirking environmental regulations, dangerous drugs being marketed legally and illegally for profit, rich people willing to destroy people, animals, and land for more riches. Those aren't just time-tested villain tropes. They're very real and very relevant. There are plenty of individuals and companies that essentially operate like Captain Planet villains. I won't name names, but they're not that hard to find. They often do make the news for all the wrong reasons. Add on top of that a very dark shift in terms of politics and social trends, and it feels like whatever progress we've made with respect to the environment has started to regress. There are people in power right now who do not believe in climate change. They jump at every chance to slash environmental protections, both for profit and out of sheer spite. And if you were to offer the same impassioned pleas of Captain Planet and the Planeteers, chances are you just get labeled a woke beta cuck. There's just no more arguing about environmental issues anymore. In the current media landscape, genuine arguments have been rendered useless due to algorithms, echo chambers, and tribalism. Captain Planet and the Planeteers aren't getting through to anyone who doesn't already side with them. That means if they're going to save the world, they'll need a lot more than your typical PSA. And that's what really makes this series so intriguing. At a time when real people conduct themselves like villains from the old show, how does Captain Planet go about protecting his world? How do the Planeteers even operate in that world? They may have these magical rings, but their opponents have endless pools of money, politicians who would let the rainforest burn to a crisp if it meant winning the next election, and a society that is just too entrenched in their ways. Even when they let their powers combine to summon Captain Planet, it feels like it's just not enough anymore. Not for their world, and certainly not for ours. But they're still going to put up a fight. The question is, what form will it take? And is it always going to feel weird in that regard? The series is still new, so only time will tell. But I encourage everyone to check it out for themselves. It might not turn you into a card-carrying environmentalist, but it will remind you why protecting the environment still matters. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Don't forget, the power is yours to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, take care and stay safe.